everybody, welcome to the presentation about money mules. My name is Rutger Leukfeldt. I won't be using any PowerPoint today, so you just have to listen to me. I will try to keep it short and not tell too much things that are not of interest for this presentation, but I can't promise anything. So this presentation will be about money mules. So I will start by telling you a bit more about the role of these money mules within the crime scripts of cybercriminal networks. And most of the things I will be telling you about is based on studies we've done before, but the focus was never on money mules. So I'll try to explain a bit more about the importance of this group within networks. After that, I will continue with some recent stuff we discovered about money mules and the subculture in which they actually, or in the subculture of which they are part of, because it's very important to understand why these money mules participate in criminal acts. And last but not least, and this is the reason why I give this talk, I will be telling you a bit more about an ongoing project we just started about interventions against money mules. So just to don't disappoint you at the end, we don't have any empirical data about that yet. So we don't have we haven't built the intervention yet, and we don't have any data, but we're in the process of doing that. So I figured it was a very good way of already sharing what we're doing in 2020 and 2021. So I will finish my presentation with that. First, let me start by telling something about myself. As I said, I'm Rutger Leukfeldt. I work for two organizations. The first one is the NSCR, the Nellis Institute for the Study of Crime and Law Enforcement. And within that institute, we study criminals. We do pretty fundamental research. So most of my colleagues don't do anything with cybercrime. And I'm leading the cybercrime cluster or theme group. And within our group, we mainly focus on criminal acts. So we focus on criminal networks, origin and growth processes, using of the dark web, criminal careers, and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, have a look on our website and see all of the cool stuff we're doing. At the Hague University, we do the much more applied research because it's a University of Applied Sciences. And at the Hague University, I lead the Center of Expertise Cybersecurity, which holds 4 research groups from different disciplines. So we both have technical groups and human factor-based groups. So it's a very nice mixture of people with different backgrounds. And there we focus mainly on making organizations more resilient. So that's the other end of the spectrum, as you can say. So on the one hand, I'm studying criminals, and on the other hand, we're studying the organizations that they actually target. So for me, it's very interesting. Well, today I'm going to talk about money mules, and of course that mainly has to do with my NSCR work, but we also are involved in some of the money mule pilots from the Hague University. So the stuff that I will tell you about that is based on studies we've done before are based mainly on studies I've done with Professor Kleemans from VU University, Professor Stoll from the Open University in the Netherlands, and more recently with Thomas Holt, Professor Holt from Michigan State University. So if you want to know more about the details I will be telling you about next, then just look up our studies that are available online, and I would just stick to the main lines now. Of course, before I start with the more empirical stuff about criminal networks, I want you to know that, and most people that know me already know this, I really like to stress the importance of doing research into the human factor of cybercrime and cybersecurity. So if you want to know more about that, just download our free research agenda that we published a couple of years ago. it's titled Research Agenda, the Human Factor in Cybercrime and Cybersecurity. We identified a number of main topics that are under-investigated at the moment and that really need the attention of scholars. So please, if you're interested in this topic, have a look at it, download it. It's for free. We're not making any money of this. And see if it helps you, identify the things that really need to be done. Of course, more recently, we published the edited volume, The Human Factor of Cybercrime. So if you're interested, it was with Routledge. If you're interested, about 19 chapters of various scholars from all over the world writing about, the most recent empirical stuff. So if you're interested in the topic, please just get one of these titles, and you will learn more about the importance of doing social sciences research into cybercrime and cybersecurity. All right, back to the main topic of this presentation, money mules. For those that don't know what a money mule is, there is a bit of debate, of course, about what a money mule is or not, as we, have in academia a lot debates about definitions. The way I see these money mules is that these are not criminals that are not part of the core group of the criminal networks, but instead they are used by the core group of criminals to maybe not even launder the money, but get money that has been stolen or money that is they gained illegally, is getting into the hands of the core members via these money mules. So, for example, when you have a phishing attack, so when I send out a phishing email and I hope somebody, falls for the fish and actually logs on via the phishing website, then I gain access or gain control over their online bank account. You can do it by doing phishing, or you can have some sort of malware scam set up in which you actually take over the computer. Doesn't matter for this for the role of the money mules. The criminals take over the computer, and of course now they can transfer the money, but they're not going to transfer the money to themselves because the bank will find out, the police will know. So they use these money mules to actually transfer the money to, and then cash the money as fast as possible in ATM machines, for example. And then the process of money laundering starts. So from my perspective, I think money mules play a very important part within the crime script of criminals that actually want to make money, either by making sure that the money can be cashed out, or by actually, traveling with the money from one country to another. So these are two different types of roles that money mules can play. But all in all, it kind of, the importance of what I'm trying to say is that these money mules might not seem like a very important part of the network because they are just, on the bottom layer. They are usually criminals that are, or people that are not the top criminals. So law enforcement tend to focus much more on the core members of the networks and maybe on some important facilitators. But I see a lot of potential for frustrating criminal processes by making sure that these networks are not able to recruit new money mules, because without them, it's indeed a lot harder to cash out money and to start money laundering. And I've been doing research into cybercriminal networks and money mules for about maybe 10 years or so. And ever since I started, so back in 2010 or so, people told me, well, these money mules, they are used at the moment, but, because there are bitcoins or the e-currencies, we don't think they're needed anymore. And for some specific attacks that might be true, for example, when you talk about ransomware, you might not need a money mule to cash out the money because the victim is paying in bitcoins, right? But for other time crimes, it still remains very important, because when you talk about phishing or banking malware or lots of other types of internet fraud, for example, the frauds that are committed using eBay or similar sites, we definitely still see that money mules play a very important role within these crime scripts, and simply because you have literally a grip on these people because you know who they are, and you can control them, and they actually carry lots of money for you from one place to another. So that's kind of important to actually know who's doing that, right? I also want to say something about the ransomware, because yes, the victims might pay in Bitcoin. The same applies for online drug markets, for example. If you sell drugs online, you get paid in Bitcoin. So one would say you don't need money mules anymore to actually launder the money or get the money to you, which is not true, because in the most cases I've seen and the cases I've studied based on police files, we definitely see that even within the cases where criminals get paid in Bitcoins or other e-currencies, at one point or another, they want to exchange it for euros or dollars, because most criminals are not able to live from e-currencies alone, and they want to spend the money. That's why they're doing it. So even in those types of crimes where initially the core members are not being paid in euros or in dollars because they don't actually steal it from the bank accounts of people, but they get paid in e-currencies, even there, it's important to have a money mule network, because you still need to exchange all of the virtual currency you have made into euros or dollars. And how do you do that? By using exchangers that actually, in most cases that I've seen, use very traditional money laundering networks that rely on these money mules also. So just to paint a picture about the importance of money mules. If you want to know more about the cyber criminal networks that I've been talking about, you can have a look at the thesis I wrote about it a couple of years ago, and of course the papers I just mentioned that I've written with Professor Kleeman, Stoll, and later with Thomas Holt. More recently, we published a big report for the Dutch government, organized crime and the use of IT. It's based on the Organized Crime Monitor, a long-running empirical instrument that actually analyzes, or of course the instrument doesn't analyze it, but people analyze police files, large-scale police investigations. These are being added to this monitor, and this actually gives you very good insight into criminal activity. One of the latest reports was specifically about organized crime and IT and organized cybercrime. So if you're interested in that, have a look at our website. If you can't find it, just shoot me an email. First, I want to talk a bit more about cybercriminal networks and the importance of money mules. I think one of the key things is that you should understand that criminals don't work alone. We criminologists know that, and we've known that for a long time. And in cybercrime, that's also true. There might be some hackers that can work alone and hack a database or whatever, but let's face it, if you're a successful hacker and you make a lot of money, you at least need somebody to help you launder the money. But in most cases, we also know that hackers don't have all the technical skills to actually execute the attacks that are very sophisticated. So you need a team of different hackers. You need people that actually focus on laundering the money. You might need some people with other skills, like just organizational skills and stuff like that. So what we've known for a long time is that criminals don't work alone, and the same kind of applies to most cyber criminals that want to make money. And this is very important, because if you have somebody that only wants to show that he or she can hack into the systems of a bank and doesn't have any other kind of motivation, that person might be very good to operate alone. But people that want to make money committing cybercrimes can't. So I think that's important to stress. And why? Because we know that traditionally, in order to get involved in one of these criminal networks, because if you work with other people, we call it a network, is that you have to rely on your social network. So it's basically the people that you know and that has to do with, in the situation where you live. So what kind of neighborhood do you live? Who are your friends? Which school did you go to? Where do you work? All of these things are very connected to whether or not you get involved into crime. It's simply a case of knowing people and using your social network to get involved in crime. And there's another element in there. It takes a lot of time to actually establish trust between criminals, because it tends to go, a criminal act has to do with something that's illegal, so you want to stay under the radar of the police. You're trying to make a lot of money, so the stakes are high, so you probably want to work with people that you trust. Well, traditionally, we know that trust building takes a long time, and that's why social ties are very important. Well, we thought it was all going to change because of the dark web and crypto markets and stuff like that. I think we showed in a number of other studies that that is not entirely true. Of course, there is the dark web, and of course, it's more easy to get involved in all sorts of criminal schemes. But we also know that lots of these networks still rely on, at least partly, on their social ties. And I think one of the main things, and this is not something that we've really published on before, but it's something that if you read our articles very good, the local embeddedness of a lot of cybercriminal networks, so both the more local networks and the very international networks, the local embeddedness is always there because of the money muling aspect. Because if you need money mules for your crime script, and a lot of cybercrimes need them, you need a local group of money mules. And yes, there on the dark web you can find people that offer these money mule networks. And so you could say, well, then it's not really local embeddedness, but it is, of course, because these networks are local. Because if you attack a bank in country X, the bank will definitely know if you're wiring lots of money to another country. So that's why you have to have your local network of money mules there. So my argument here is money mules are very important to be able to frustrate even the very international networks on a local level. Because if you can make sure that it's much harder to actually recruit new people to money mule for you, then it gets a lot harder to actually to carry out your criminal activities and make money. I will give you an example, and I've used this example before because I don't know, it was my first case and I loved it, but it's also a very good example of a local network. So I'm going to give you two examples and show you why these money mules are important. So the first one is a network that was active in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. They carried out phishing attacks, were pretty successful, I think made more than $1 million in a year. They had about 9 core members that coordinated all of the attacks and had various kind of roles and knowledge and skills. None of them had technical skills, by the way. So they literally used one of their contacts in Nigeria, which they knew because they were already involved in a lot of scams with people from the Nigerian community. And apparently that's how they got acquainted with this person in Nigeria. That person was actually making the phishing websites and the databases behind it and stuff like that. And we know that because we got the wiretap information and we actually have the conversations in which the core members talk to this person. So this cybercriminal network that made more than $1 million in a year, actually only had one technical person doing all of the technical work for them. However, my main argument here is the importance of the money mules. And what you would see is that they made a lot of money, right? The only problem for them was they could not transfer, like if you would attack a customer that had, for example, 50,000 euros in the bank account, you could not just transfer that money all at once to somebody else because the bank would know there are limitations and stuff like that. Furthermore, you can simply not cash out that kind of money at once in an ATM machine. So you might need 50 money mules for that bank account, maybe 25 if you're lucky. But my point here is you need a lot of people to actually get 50,000 euros, and they made $1 million. So they needed hundreds and hundreds of money mules. And this is one of the bottlenecks in the crime script because they had a very good structured criminal network. All of the core members had a very long criminal career, so they knew what they were doing. They were also still going on and dealing drugs and doing other types of fraud. So they were expanding their business by also doing cybercrime. They only needed one person to actually help them with becoming a cybercriminal network, because that's basically what they did. They evolved from a traditional network that only committed traditional crimes into a very successful network that made a lot of money using phishing. But they only needed one person for that, right? And so that's not the bottleneck. And I can see that happening more and more and more. I just read a nice article about that with Robbie Rutger from Erasmus University in the Netherlands in deviant behavior. So if you're interested in this, in the intertwinement of traditional crime and street gangs and cybercrime, I would suggest to download it. It just published a few weeks ago, so very new, very relevant. But the main point here is that in order to become a cybercriminal network, you don't need a lot of technical skills. But in order to become a successful network, you do need a lot of money mules, because we definitely saw that in this case in Amsterdam, they needed hundreds and hundreds of them. So indeed, if you are able to frustrate that process, we're really winning, because that's much more important than stopping them from buying something on the dark web or stopping the developer of making it, because that's only one person and it's very easy to actually get somebody else to do it. But if we can make sure that we tackle the money mule base, then it's much more efficient. So the second example I want to give, because I can already hear people saying, well, this is a very local network in Amsterdam, committing crimes in the Netherlands, so that's why they have money mules. Another example is a network from Latvia that actually attacked customers of banks in 7 different European countries using malware. So there was no really, there was not a lot of interaction between the victims and the offenders. They simply made sure that they infected a number of machines in all of these countries. And once a machine was infected, they were able to take over control of the internet banking sessions and were able to transfer money to money mules. But again, they needed local money mule networks, because the bank immediately knows when you're transferring lots of money from the Netherlands to Latvia. This is just a simple thing they can see with their monitoring systems. So they needed a local money mule network. So first they tried to recruit within the Latvian community in a couple of the major cities in the Netherlands. And here you can immediately see the local embeddedness of this network, because even though they operated from Latvia, and we expect from other countries also, but the main group was in Latvia, they did not need to be here physically in the Netherlands and in other European countries. They used their malware to take over the machines. They still needed their local money mule network, and they recruited it along the lines of family and friendship ties between Latvia and the Latvian community in the Netherlands. And again, you see, this is a very, very efficient way. If you could make sure that these people did not participate in the scheme, these money mules, then it would have been very hard for these criminals to actually attack in the Netherlands and in other countries. So what I've learned is that, and this is based on all of the empirical stuff we've done over the past years, that if you look at cybercriminal networks, you got local networks, you got international networks, you got high-tech networks, low-tech networks, but most of them still need local contacts within countries to help them either get the money or launder the money. So all in all, the money mule is very, very important. Usually these are not criminals that law enforcement tends to be very interested in, because let's face it, these are not the criminal masterminds. But from a perspective of trying to, frustrate the criminal process, these persons are very, very interesting.